Hey, what's going on, guys? It is your host with the most, Underdone Toaster, coming live. I'm joined by my co-host Z Buckner for episode 21 of the Social Eclipse podcast. Buck, thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome. Another week, another podcast. Well, I guess we didn't do last week, but Happy New Year. That's
That's
why.
right. Yeah, not
Yeah.
just another week, another year. We hope all of you guys had a wonderful holiday season. And here we go with 2026, another year full of opportunities. And hopefully it's a great year for everyone.
Yep.
So, it's no secret that the United States has kept things from its citizens. Would you agree with that statement, Buck?
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say that's probably been the case for a very, very long time.
Well, today we're going to be going over that quite a bit because our podcast topic today is: should the government hide things from their people, and is censorship protection or oppression? So, when I was originally thinking about this question, it was on the deep end. It was some pretty crazy things like aliens. In fact, I think I came up with this when we were talking about the episode of Earth being a speck in the ocean of space. I was like, hey, if aliens really were real, and there were thousands of giant galactic entities out there, much more powerful than us, and the United States government knew about it, like, I think the point I was making was I would agree with the government to hide it from its people. Because if there was something so big like that that could cause people to panic, people to live in constant fear of being obliterated, not knowing a clear future of humanity, my thoughts were it'd be best to just keep us in the dark about that and keep us all basically ignorant. And that's just one really large, crazy example. But I think we could also pertain it to lots of other smaller and more realistic things.
Yeah. Yeah. We could dumb it down to even the really small things, but that's interesting because I don't remember you having that opinion. I don't know if I would agree with that opinion, but we can get to it.
Yeah, yeah. I can't remember if I said it on the podcast, but I remember I brought up the topic for some reason on one of our podcasts. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Is this a
um,
different I mean, before the podcast we said we would bundle it in with censorship, but Uh, is that different though? Isn't censorship like, yeah, it's hiding things, but it's also controlling at the rate at which other people can say certain stuff too? Like, are we going to treat this as two different kind of subtopics, or do you think they're essentially the same thing?
no, I would agree that they're two different subtopics. We were just going to combine them into one to kind of create like an
Okay.
overarching government power and controlling its
Okay.
people sort of deal.
All right. Cool.
So okay, so I'm gonna reword the question a little bit and give it to you, Buck, because I want to hear your answer. But if your government knew that releasing a large piece of information would cause mass panic and deaths, do you think that it's the people's right to know? Like, should they still tell us?
Well, I don't think. I think the statement is flawed. I don't think releasing information is going to cause mass panic, like you would suggest. So, I don't know if I'm weaseling out of that question, but let's assume it's true. Let's assume it does cause mass panic. If it did, I think you would have a case that, yeah, I think maybe the government should either drip feed it or something, you know? I don't know how. But I do have a problem with the idea of the government hiding things because they're there to serve the people. And seems like when you hide something from somebody, you're not really doing them a service unless you're right. Like it was in their best interest. But that's where I don't bridge the gap there.
Yeah. December 21st, 2012. Do you remember where you and I were, Buck?
I do. I remember exactly where you and I were.
Tell me about that night a little bit.
Okay, so for those of you youngins, generation octopus or whatever we're at, that don't know, 2012 was a pretty big year. We were all looking forward to the end of the world, and I know that happens like every other month nowadays, but this was like a big one. The Mayan calendar ended in 2012 at a very specific date. December, was it December 12th? Yeah, 12,
December
12, 12.
21st.
December
Is
21st.
Yeah,
Okay.
12/21/12,
Okay.
I believe.
Uh, and this was such a big thing. They even made like movies about it. And there were a pretty large amount of people who actually believed, or at least memed it, that it was going to end. And it was being memed for a while, like years leading up to this. So you and I, Toast and I, he came over to my house and we had like a little buddy sleepover because we were what, like 14?
Yeah,
And
something like that.
and there was even a time when it was supposed to end. I think it was like 1 a.m. or something. And we got up and we stared out the window. Nothing happened.
We said, "Bring it on."
We said, "Bring it on." We said, "This is it." We held hands. We made our confession. And nothing happened. And that was it. We told each other our crushes in school, because we were in middle school or high school or whatever. And nothing happened. And we were embarrassed and we went back to sleep.
That's right. And
uh,
it was too bad because I had spent all my money on lottery tickets, so I was completely
yeah,
broke after that.
I
Um,
remember I did some pretty rash things too and regretted it soon after. Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you for bringing back some good memories. So, like Buck said, the world did not end on that night. However, as you mentioned, there was a movie made about the end of the Mayan calendar 2012. And in the movie, the world basically did end. Major hurricanes, catastrophes, earthquakes, tsunamis, all that sort of deal. And in the movie, the government knew about it for several years but kept it a secret. And
Oh,
because they
right.
kept it a secret, they had time to build not spaceships, but what turned out to be very large, durable ships in order to survive. And because of that, they essentially saved humanity. And there are lots of movies like that. You see some asteroid movies like Greenland. Um, uh, I don't know, maybe
Moonfall.
Independence Day. I think any major catastrophe movies, most of the time the government knows about it. So, so Buck, I'm gonna have to disagree with you that releasing a piece of information could cause mass panic and death. Because I think that if they had information such as large as that, or maybe something even larger, like, hey, we just learned from scientists that a black hole is going to envelop the sun in 5 years, then telling humanity would certainly cause mass panic, deaths, and destruction.
Yeah, another one that comes to my mind is the three body problem. And I know the government doesn't really reveal it in that one. But yeah, I mean, you make a good point. I guess just when you use the alien one, like my mind says, okay, if everybody freaks out about that, like there's kind of no reason to. Like, oh, aliens exist, but they haven't contacted us. So I guess there are levels, which does prove your point that it should be hidden at some point. But what is that point? And maybe it's imminent danger. I think is probably the line I would draw. But the idea that aliens exist and maybe have visited us and that's it, I don't think that alone isn't enough to cause mass panic. I don't think so.
Okay. I would also have to disagree with that. And let me
Really?
explain why. Let me explain why.
Okay.
I've always been of the opinion that if UFOs were real, which I actually don't believe in UFOs anymore, I don't believe that aliens are visiting us. Because if everyone these days has an iPhone, then we would be getting a lot more footage than we did in the freaking 90s. Okay, but we're not. But anyway, if we did find out that aliens were visiting us, then they would need technology that is so incredibly advanced that they would have to be able to travel basically faster than light because the nearest star system to us, I think, is like light years and light years away. Okay.
I think it's 200
So,
light years.
yeah. So if we found out that aliens had been visiting us, then they would be way more advanced, probably so advanced that that we're basically ants to them. And if humanity found out about that, then we would be living under a constant fear, even if they were friendly aliens. Humanity would be living under a constant fear. Hey, any minute, these aliens could decide that we're a threat and wipe us out.
I mean, yeah, yeah, that's fair.
Do you disagree with that, bud?
No, I agree. I just like why panic? I think the majority of not America, but the majority of the world knows that like us panicking isn't going to change anything, you know. But maybe I'm giving humanity too much credit.
Yeah, I think a lot of people use any excuse they can to cause a ruckus, unfortunately. Like we see it at
Yeah,
protests a lot, 90% of the protesters are peaceful and doing a good thing. And then you have a small minority that's very vocal and they say, hey, here's my chance to loot stores and destroy cars and make fires. It's like some people
yeah,
are just looking for an excuse, but um,
it's true.
I don't know. Anyway, we're getting a little stuck on that one single piece about aliens, which is, possible but fairly unrealistic. So let's dive deeper. This is philosophy. Let's always dive deeper. So secrecy and censorship, they're two different things. Maybe we'll talk about secrecy first, but it's basically withholding information from the public. And we've seen the United States government do it tons and tons of times. Um, JFK, Amelia Earhart, Epstein, wink, wink.
Whoa, wink, wink.
Hey, this podcast topic just became a little more relevant, I would say.
It
Um,
did.
but yeah, that there are good reasons why the government needs some secrecy, right? Maybe there's military plans, intelligence that they're currently using against foreign nations that are a threat to the United States, ongoing operations, things like that. Or, yeah, I don't know, I guess it would be mostly military based. But I feel like there are also so many different things out there where if we found out, then it would not harm anyone except for the government itself or members in the government. So when you're trying to define what harm is, it's a little hard to defend the government and their secrecy when the only reason they're not disclosing information is to protect themselves.
Kind of. There's a pretty simple rule that like, hey, if we shouldn't tell other countries, if it's a secret from them, it should probably also be a secret from the people because you can't trust the public not to share information, right? Like I can't share my military secrets with 300 people in America, 300 million people in America, and trust that no, the rest of the world doesn't find out, right? That's just not plausible. So, but when does it become a thing where like, hey, it has nothing to do with not telling other countries? It's like it's demonizing the actual people on which you're serving. I don't know if there's a line to be told. Like, who decides that? I mean, I know who decides that,
Yeah,
but
and that
we need to
that's a
define what does harm. Like, at what point does it harm the American people? Or not American? We're not doing America. Sorry. I'm thinking in terms of America, but we're talking about governments in general.
yeah, and that's a good point because especially in today with technology and the internet, it's like even a small sect of people knowing a secret. If it's a big enough secret, then it's
Yeah,
going to get out eventually, right? And eventually the entire world's going to know. So when with the government and these very sensitive things, it's either tell no one or basically tell everyone. It's kind of black and white.
yeah, yeah. It is.
So another reason that we bring up this topic is because uh, I guess the best way to word it is how should we trust those who are apparently the most intelligent, the most powerful, um, they know best. Should we trust them to hold information that perhaps not everyone should hold? You
Well,
know,
we kind
like
of we debunked the no best intelligence thing last week, did we not?
we did. We did go over that a good amount.
Yeah, but I see your point. The point holds. Yeah. Well, I think it's an interesting point because I think when we talk about should people or should the government, and let's say we do arrive at the conclusion that yes, government should hide things from people, you're winning me over so far. Let's say that that's the conclusion we reach. Um, I don't think people think about that when they think about who they're electing. You know, they think about policy. Like, what's their policy on this? What do they think about this? Like, where do they stand on this issue? We don't really think about, oh, can these people be trusted to tell us when we should be told something, right? And
Right.
that opens a hole for them to take advantage of, whether that be like conflict of interest or whatever. Like it's that gives them leverage.
Yeah. And there's always been a joke that goes around that if the government was hiding aliens, then Trump would have slipped it out by
Really? I
now.
don't know. Oh, because he's dumb or something?
Yeah, just because he's
Or
such a
because
blabbermouth about everything. It's like, hey, if they were
oh
hiding aliens, then Trump would have
right.
he would have accidentally said something or on purpose said something by now.
Oh right, yeah. Yeah. I haven't heard that in a while, but now that you say that, I think I have heard people say that, which is funny, which is pretty funny. But I
Yeah,
remember
I mean,
Obama was like asked point blank. He said like someone asked him like, "Are there aliens?" And he said something that was interesting, but I don't know. You never really know because it's never plain, right?
yeah, yeah. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
um, so I guess secrecy. It's not always about control, though, is it? Like we like to think about the government having secrecy and think it's because they want to maintain control over its people. But it can't always be about that. Like surely there's information out there that they're right about that truly if it were to get into the public eye, it would hurt the nation or humanity as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said, you're starting to win me over on that, but I still am having a hard time visualizing like what that would be because we don't know, right? But I'm having a hard time thinking of a hypothetical.
Are the end of the world situations a little too out of left field for you? You want
Yeah,
something
I,
realistic?
I get your point, but I mean, we've never seen that before, so we don't really have concrete evidence that humanity would really freak out to that level. I'm not saying it's not possible. It's certainly possible with social media nowadays, but it's a little left field, yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, yeah, I don't know of any huge government secrets that have been given out um, in history that's like made people panic and be like, "Yeah, I wonder. Now I understand why you kept it from us." I know they've released a lot of secrets over the years, like Agent Orange and probably COVID
Yeah.
origins, stuff like that. But none of it is so big that would have made people panic. So I see where you're coming from. Also, I see
Just
where
that
you're
every
coming
time I try to think of a hypothetical, it just kind of flips itself into being like they were just protecting themselves from some sort of controversy, or some sort of um yeah, like a controversy. Like we did the wrong thing 50 years ago and we're going to wait 100 years to tell people because then it's so far in the past that it's not us anymore.
from. Right.
That's like if even if I'm trying to do it in good faith and I'm like, okay, they're genuinely hiding something to protect us, it's still flipped like in my mind, like it still leads there somehow, which is why I'm not totally sold on the statement that they're doing it just for our own good. Like I totally get the state secrets from foreign governments thing. I totally get that, but you know,
Hmm. So we've had We've had a podcast episode before about the trolley problem, right?
Yes, we have multiple, I think.
Yeah. So, could do you think we could relate that to this situation in any way?
I'm I'm sure we could. Let's put one president of the United States on one side. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. That was a joke. That was the
But
joke.
the reason I bring up the trolley problem is because sometimes the outcome, I think, should overcome like basic human rights. Like I don't know. I really it's hard to word this because I don't want to go too far off track of the basic topic that we're talking about. But let's take the CIA for example. It's I think it's international law that to not torture. Like I think it's literally a law with the Geneva Convention or something to not torture. But we know for a fact that the CIA has implemented torture in the past.
Yeah,
So if there's a CIA agent and he captures a terrorist and the terrorist is going to kill 10,000 people, then is it morally justified for that CIA agent to torture this terrorist until he gets the information? So we in my opinion, yes. But what I'm trying to compare it to is maybe there is times with the US government where yeah, like humans, we do deserve the right to know things, especially things that impact us constantly. But maybe the outcome of what the government is doing is more profitable to humanity than our knowledge of such thing.
maybe. But I think he does think that's such a big responsibility that you would need someone specifically in the government, maybe even an organization that makes that decision. Because, like you said, you can't really draw a hard line in the sand on, like, okay, we got one terrorist versus how many people is it that he's about to kill for me to justify torturing him? You know what I mean? You can't really put that into law. Like, oh, okay, it has to be more than 500. You would need someone whose job it is to make those decisions, not only to take action, but but after that to hide it. You know, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
I'm being naive, and maybe there is someone in like certain in specific governments where like it is their job to make. Obviously, the decision is made by you know by certain people, but like when it comes to actually hiding things and keeping things, I don't think anybody had that's like their specific job. Like they're elected to do that. You know, am I wrong?
No, I'd agree. I think that that's exactly what they're elected for, actually. Hate to say it,
Really?
but
Yeah, I guess so. But then it goes back to like we they don't really campaign on that kind of stuff, so nobody elects them with that in mind. So
yeah. No, I guess you're right. Like on the forefront, like you said before, whenever we're electing officials, it's mostly because of policies and what they're open about, what they're constantly saying. But like a layer a little bit deeper is when you're electing someone, you're essentially trusting them with the nuclear war codes, for example. You know, you're
yeah,
you're making them the most powerful people in the history of the world. So not only do you trust them with that information, but you're also trusting them with the information that the public doesn't know about. You know, it's saying, hey, I'm electing you because I know that there's things out there that haven't been released to the public, but I'm going to trust you to do what's right, whether that's release them or keep them with you.
that's a lot of power to give people.
It is. It is.
Yeah, because you're accepting not only the fact that they'll do it, but you're accepting that it's okay for them to do it, which is what this whole episode's about. Like, they're allowed to keep secrets from us, and we're not even going to know what they are. But I trust this person's personality. I trust their intuition, their intelligence to do that. So, yeah, yeah. But the problem here's the real problem with that is, let's say they choose to hide a certain thing. And most of America, I keep saying America, sorry, we're being biased here. Most of the people under said government would not be okay with them hiding that thing if they would know about it. But the problem is they don't know about it. Do you see what I'm saying? So they
Mm-hmm.
can't be like, okay, this guy's incompetent. He doesn't know how to keep our secrets, or he doesn't know how to keep the right secrets versus tell us secrets. Like if there are secrets in the government, they cannot be, we can't hold them accountable for that kind of stuff. I think that's one of the biggest issues here.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'd agree. It comes down to it's like saying victors are the ones who rewrite history. It's like you cannot get a broad scope of the truth without having both sides. And
Yeah.
yeah, if you're the government, then you could basically say that anything is important to keep secret as an
Yeah.
excuse to keep yourselves in power, to keep the government in power, to keep the people oppressed. And that's unfortunately, like looking back in history, I'd say that most of the time, whenever there's a secret that's revealed, it's because of something like that. The government not wanting revolt or rebellion for bad things that they've done.
Yeah. How about this? I'll put it in a microcosm, and this might be a bad idea. This might be stupid, but for the sake of philosophy, when you get into a relationship with someone else, um, it's pretty common knowledge, I would say, that communication and not keeping secrets from each other is one of the most important things in a relationship. Would you agree?
Yes.
The complete openness. Um, I think that kind of proves the point that secrets are not a good thing because yes, you could trust this person as much as you can trust them, 100%. Like I trust you, but you still somehow allow them. Like, okay, if you want to keep a secret from me, I will trust you. I That's kind of hard. You know what I mean? Why would they keep secrets from you if you trust them? And I know that doesn't really apply to a government because yes, it's not a 1-1, and they're over. It's a group of people overseeing millions and millions of people, and so it's not exactly like, hey, I'm keeping this from you for this specific reason. It's a whole bunch of people, and then you can generalize, and then you can make excuses. Um, much more excuses than you could in just a 1-1 relationship. So I know it's not a perfect metaphor, but my point is why should we trust people to keep secrets at all if we can't prove that there's any reason to keep these secrets? Which I guess is the point of the whole episode. So maybe that's just a useless tangent, but am I making sense here?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question because besides like the active wartime things or actual secret intelligence, I can't think of a lot of realistic examples where the government's like, hey, we need to keep this from the public because, it's going to hurt them. I don't
Yeah.
see a whole lot of things like that.
Yeah, and I guess my point is like, how can I ever trust the government with the secrets that they're keeping if I never know those secrets? Which is why the whole communication thing in a relationship has to be completely like 100% honesty in the first place. Like, I can't trust you if I don't know how to trust you.
Right.
So I guess you could fix that by like maybe doing a thing where like it's kind of like, remember I explained like the whole copyright like free use thing, like Mickey Mouse after 100 years becomes public. Maybe there's something in the government that says like after 100 years you have to release all information, so you know exactly what they were keeping from you and judge them on that. But then at that point, it's like this isn't the same government, so I can't. It doesn't build trust anyway because that was 100 years ago. So I guess that system doesn't work. But I don't know. It's just I don't see any accountability, I think, is what it comes down to for me.
Yeah. And even if they do release that information 100 years later, like not only is it not the same government, but even if they were still doing the things that they did 100 years ago, we would have no idea
You're right.
because like,
Right.
like you said, there's no accountability.
Yep. Absolutely right. So it's hard because I think we've talked in the past episodes that the number one thing, I mean, we've had the question at the end of the episode. I think it was last week. It's like, how do we make governments better? And I think one of our answers was more accountability, and that could be more frequent elections, better ways to vet the people that we're electing, what have you, yada, yada. And it's really hard to have any sort of accountability if there's secrets on one side. So that's why I'm not quite there yet. Like, I get it, but I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah. Um, have you seen the new Superman movie?
Yeah.
To dig in a little bit deeper with your metaphor about you and your significant other having good communication. Let's say that looking at the Superman movie, let's say that Lois Lane was going through Superman's archive and found out some secret file, and watching it, she saw Superman's parents say, "Hey, you're destined to destroy planet Earth and enslave all of its people." Would you say that that's information that Lois Lane should share with Superman? Or is that information that would be best kept secret?
Wait, Superman doesn't know and just she knows?
Correct.
Okay. Oh man, that's a good question. And now you're making me think of like secret identities with superheroes, they don't reveal it because they want to keep people safe and stuff. This is good.
It's true.
Man. I mean, I would say so just for the fact that they should probably tell, they're in a relationship. But I know that's not the point you're getting to. So, yeah, I would say so. I would say she should tell him. I think the bigger question is, you know, should everyone know that? And I know that wouldn't happen in a movie. You wouldn't like voluntarily probably give up that information. But like, if the government found out that information, like, should they? I don't know. It's convoluted.
Yeah. I asked that question because whenever there are better examples out there, but whenever I think about it, and I'm like, hey, with me and my wife or my friends or my parents, if I knew something that would hurt them and there's no reason for them to know, I would not tell them.
Right. So your
And
argument is there's no good reason for Superman to know that information. Like, it won't help him in any way.
yeah, it would do nothing. I mean, you could argue it would, maybe first he struggles with it, and then over time he's like, I'll create my own destiny, things like that. But the point that I'm trying to make is I do believe that there's circumstances in which it's better to withhold information because it would do more good than if you were to give
Yeah,
it. And
that's true.
it
That's true.
and the government is a much bigger deal than that. Obviously, humanity compared to one person is different than that metaphor. But
Yes.
I am able to draw parallels. Well, like, hey, it's the government. They have all this information, so much stuff that we don't know about. But what is the purpose of us knowing other than to stir things up? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think in one scenario it's a one-to-one. I can build trust in a significant other or even in a friend, because in a way we're on the same level. Not really in intelligence, but in like, I don't even know what the word is. But when you've got a government and I'm electing somebody to oversee, I'm giving them quite a bit more power that I don't have. That's where there's a gap there in which, like, yeah, they're gonna know more, but like, I'm trusting them with a bigger power than I could ever have. I'm not explaining this right.
No, I mean that's what I've
um
been saying is when we elect officials, like whether you think it's fair or not, part of the reason
yeah,
we elect them is because we're
yeah,
trusting them to not only have more excuse me, more power in terms of the economy and people running the government, but also more knowledge than what we have and making the right decisions based off of that knowledge.
right. It's a good point. I'm just saying, how could we ever have enough trust in them with that much power? You know what I mean? Like, how could you ever trust someone that much, really? Because we're not on the same level, and we never will be. It's a weird way of explaining it. I don't know how else to say it, though. Like, if
Yeah,
how can you trust someone else with a power that you yourself can never have? Right? With so much information that you will never have. How do you build that much trust in someone?
yeah, and it certainly is a paradox. It's like, yeah, how do you give this person the power to withhold information from you if you don't know what they're withholding? It's like,
Right.
yeah, what are you supposed to do
Exactly.
about that?
Yeah.
Well, tough questions, just like always. Yeah, all tough questions that I don't know. It'd be a lot easier if we were all knowing and knew what the government was hiding from its people. But I guess for now we can only talk in scenarios.
That's true, but here, let's bring in the Epstein files, all right? Because it was bound to happen. So we're
Oh,
talking.
he's doing it. He's doing it.
I'm doing it. I'm doing it. So we're talking about scenarios in which the government should not hide from or should. I'm sorry. We've discussed certain scenarios where it would be good that the government should hide things from the people. Whether or not they've worked or not is up to you. But let's go on the other side, a very realistic scenario of something that's very relevant. Supposedly, the government has been hiding and protecting very powerful individuals who have committed these very terrible acts for the past 6 years or whatever, and however ever long they've also known about Epstein, however else long. Um, it's a very clear scenario of the other side where it's like, okay, the government obviously hid something that protected bad people. Whereas if they would have told us, the public, they could have been held accountable. Um, so, so then it's like, okay, so yes, they should hide things from us, but if we give them that power, the obvious next step is they will inevitably misuse that power in some way. So there has to be some sort of middle ground. My point, I'm trying to say that, like, yes, your point holds and is valid, but there is another side to it. But I guess it's like that with all sort of power, though, right? Like, all power can be misused. So you can't pretend like this is the only scenario where it's like this. But I just think the point should be made, you know.
Yeah, and you could argue that it's a basic human right that if there's knowledge out there, anyone should be able to access that knowledge. You know, whether it's harmful,
Yeah.
whether it's scary, whether it's depressing, you could argue that, hey, if it's knowledge about something that took place in the past, not even things that are occurring right now that maybe have to be kept secret, but if it's something that took place in the past, then no matter who is involved, the knowledge should be accessible to everyone because it's the right to do so.
Yeah.
And yeah, that is a big controversy right now with the Epstein files. And I think the exact same thing applies. It's like, hey, no matter what the consequences, the people have spoken. And if they could vote on this, they absolutely would, in a huge and massive way, say release all the information on it. And you could say that about a lot of other things also.
Yeah, and then there's also the conflict of interest we mentioned. I mean, who's to stop anybody from hiding anything that, the people we put in power are doing? They're obviously going to hide that from us. In any scenario, like anybody, if they're doing something wrong, they're not going to tell us. So that's a pretty easy scenario to assume has happened and will continue to happen.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah.
So turning to the second subtopic in our podcast today, about censorship. So now we're kind of turning things a little bit. We're not saying should the government be hiding stuff from its people, but should the government be hiding things from its people that other people are saying? I suppose is one way to say it. So,
force
and
other
and
people.
talking about that, what's that?
You say you mean like should they put mandates on like forcing other people to not say certain things or to say certain things?
Both ways, I suppose. I guess
Should
the big
we
example that I'm thinking of is like books. You know, back not so much these days, but a long time ago, book censorship was a really big thing, with book burnings and making sure that the average citizen couldn't get their hands on certain things because the government would deem it propaganda and lies. But if we're talking about not just books, but also just people going out and saying what they want on the streets or on podcasts or on the news, it's like, should there be where's the line between allowing things like hate speech and misinformation, versus just like letting people say what they think?
when it starts harming people, which is a pretty vague answer, but I think when you talk about censorship, you should also talk about propaganda because I think they're twofold, two sides of a coin, opposites really. But, if you argue that censorship is wrong, I think you should also argue that propaganda is wrong. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. Uh, I mean, it's true. I mean, this is we've been arguing here in America for the longest time. How do you give people free speech? And so, yeah, like you can say what you want. Once it starts harming another person, obviously, I think most of us would agree that that's another line. But um, sorry, what was the initial question?
Um, I guess we're just defining what the line is between like bad censorship and necessary censorship.
Yeah, I just think it's when it harms another person. And I don't think a lie in itself is that, I'm not saying people shouldn't be allowed to lie. I'm just saying when the lie hurts somebody else or a group of individuals or you know what I mean?
Okay, so not information that hurts another person, but false information that hurts another person should be censorship.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, and I think I would agree with that because yeah, you can lie all day every day about people and twist it into, oh, I was just joking, or oh, it's the truth in my viewpoint. But yeah, if it goes so far that's causing physical, emotional harm against this person, then that is something that should be censored. But one big part in which we see censorship in the United States, at least, is in politics. You know, you see two sides of the aisle who are always disagreeing on things, and it seems like they're always screaming censorship at one side versus the other. And so sometimes it's not because one individual has been harmed directly and in a very public way, but sometimes they want censorship because, oh, you're hurting this class of people or this race of people, or the lies you're spreading is hurting the Republican Party. So, is there any point in which it shouldn't be directed at a single person and you should allow censorship versus groups of individuals?
What do you mean?
It seemed like in your example when you were saying that lies could be harmful to people. I'm just thinking, what if there's lies being spread that are hurting like the Republican or Democratic establishment? What if it's an entire group of powerful people, but they are still quote unquote lies?
Nation as opposed to an individual or a I mean that's slander, isn't it? Isn't that like a legal thing?
I think I think it is technically illegal if it has been proven that it was false and the person giving that information was false.
Yeah.
It's not slander. That's not the term. It's
Is it libel?
what is it? Uh, I know that Trump is suing like the New York Times or something, or maybe 60 Minutes about it. What's the word? I'm completely spacing. Um, let me see. Uh, Slander, false statement, accusation, defamation. Is that it?
Oh, maybe defamation. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's it.
that's what happened to Johnny Depp when he was, his whole argument in that famous court case with his ex-wife was that she released an op-ed that basically defamed him, like lies against him that caused Disney to fire him. So his argument was, hey, not only were these lies, but when she released that article, Disney didn't want anything to do with him, so he lost money in the process. So he could argue defamation.
Uh-huh.
He did end up winning that case.
Okay. So yeah, I think it could be hard to determine whether someone truly knows if it's a lie or not.
Yes.
I know that when Trump tried to get Jimmy Kimmel kicked off, it was because of defamation. He was saying that like, hey, Jimmy Kimmel is saying that the Charlie Kirk assassin was right leaning, and that should be defamation. That's why he wanted him to be kicked off. So we hear about things like this all the time, but the hard part, like I said, is proving, hey, this individual knew that it was a lie, yet they continued to spread it.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. It's a gray area, not just legally, but let's say we talk about like hate speech that is a lie that harms, like let's say a race of individuals. Um, Sometimes I think you would run into the argument, well, okay, that's not only does it hurt the individual, but it's a lie. I could totally see scenarios where the person was like, no, it's not a lie. Like, that's true. You see what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? That's the other problem is the two sides don't even agree whether it's true or not. Whereas proper propaganda is a let's say an organization or an entity that's like deliberately spreading lies for a certain, I'm not saying that that's easier to prove in court or whatever, but it's less of a gray area, potentially more dangerous for sure, because they're blatant lies, as opposed to like discussion on validity, I guess. But you're right.
mm-hmm.
I think the problem therein lies. Is it an actual lie? Can I prove it's a lie? And can I prove it did harm? That's a lot of things that have to line up. It's hard to do if the two parties don't even agree.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of Alex Jones and why he went bankrupt. Actually, with
Oh,
what's
this
his? Is
Sandy
it
Hook.
Infowars? Yeah, is his company Infowars?
Oh yeah. It is. Yep.
Yeah. So basically, for those of you out there who don't know, Alex Jones is a far right leaning conspiracy theorist with a pretty major platform. And he's had conspiracy theories over the years, over and over and over, and he was never really punished for any of them because I'm assuming none of them were very harmful. Well, one day after the Sandy Hook shootings, he goes on his podcast or his show and he claims that it was all staged. And after that took place, a lot of the Sandy Hook parents got phone calls and were harassed and threatened by the audience of Alex Jones. Because of that, Alex Jones was sued by the parents of Sandy Hook, taken to court, and I think he lost on grounds of defamation and had to pay like $1 billion, which
Yeah.
means he's bankrupt now.
Yeah. It was a lot of money.
So taking that as an example, Alex Jones, I don't know too much about him, but I know that he's pretty crazy, like he's borderline insane. Would it be reasonable to argue that he believed what he was speaking and it was just his audience that was causing harm and therefore he should not have been censored or sued?
So you're saying the audience is to blame and they should have been taken to court.
I'm playing devil's advocate a
Yeah.
little bit, but
Here's
I'm saying that that may be one point of view.
here's where I think the argument is against that. Those people did not harass the Sandy Hook families until Alex Jones made them aware of said theory. So you can't really prove that they're the psychos. I mean, they are the psychos. Don't get me wrong, but there was a middle party that instigated, that pushed the narrative, the agenda, that kind of triggered it. So yeah, like he didn't do the actual act, but he culminated an environment that allowed it to happen, I guess is the counter argument to your point. I think it's a good point, for the sake of argument, but
Okay. But taking what you just said, he created an environment which allowed it to happen.
yeah.
It sounds like you could take that into a butterfly effect of sorts and give the government power with them saying, hey, all of these different platforms that we don't like are doing just that. They're creating environments which are spreading lies, and causing harmful content.
Well, you'd have to prove that. In which case the Sandy Hook family was, I mean, I don't know, but supposedly in court was able to prove that there was harm done. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
But what if your audience gets so large that they can interpret things in such a way where they go out and do harmful things? Because I don't know. I'm trying to think of different examples, but mostly in politics, thinking about podcasters on the right, like Joe Rogan, or shows like The Daily Wire, and then things on the left, like maybe Hassan on Twitch. I mean, that they talk to so many people over and over every single day
there's bound to be psycho.
that yeah, eventually they're gonna say some stuff, and their
Yeah.
audience, even if it's a small fraction of the audience, their audience is gonna say, "Hey, this is grounds to cause harm to somebody." Like, is there a? Does that mean that we should take their podcast down? Does that mean that we should censor their show?
I
Are
mean,
they
it's a
creating
very good.
grounds for harm?
It's a very good point. I see where you're going. I also think that you can get too close into territory where I think people should be accountable for the words they say, and if they have such a big platform, you know, and they're even if they're live for 12 hours a day, and you're bound to say something stupid in the course of 12 hours. You know what I mean? I think there should be some accountability. There should be some responsibility to know that you have that big of a platform and that you shouldn't say or should say certain things. And I know people with are going to say, oh, free speech, they should be able to say what they want. That's that's where I draw the line personally. I feel like if you have such a big platform and you know that there's bound to be psychos out there who will take you at your word, there are certain things you can and shouldn't say. And of course, like maybe what you say wasn't entirely wrong and someone took it to be wrong and then they did something stupid. But that's what the courts are for, to kind of define, hey, is there some sort of connection there that proves that this was actually harmful information? And that's where the gray area is. But I don't think you should totally relinquish these people for the things they say just because there may or may not be people who could misrepresent it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, it's a long-winded.
So,
But
so it sounds like what we're coming down to is censorship should be necessary when lies, proven lies, are causing harm either directly or through cultivating an audience who harms that individual or group, and it can be proven in a court of law.
yeah, yeah, I would say that's pretty good. Yeah.
Okay. This really comes back to accountability in the government, because you were just saying propaganda. Like, aren't we? I know that the United States probably maybe isn't as bad as things like Russia and China, but I don't know. I'm surrounded by propaganda, so I can't prove that. But even in the United States, it's obvious that there's propaganda about how great we are and our military, and it's best if we go and take over other countries because they need us. So it really stinks that the government is in charge of censorship for its people, but when it comes to them saying whatever they want, whether they're lies or not, there really is no accountability for that.
No, there's really not. And you could say with any of our political topics, okay, what if the courts are wrong? What if they say something isn't a lie that really is? Well, that's another problem entirely, right? That's corruption at that point. And it's hard to prove that because who's going to keep them accountable? The courts are supposed to keep them accountable. And yeah, so it really does become a problem of, again, conflict of interest. Do too many people hold too many positions of power where you can't even they can't keep themselves in check. And it happens on both sides, and it happens that sometimes it's more severe than others, and sometimes it's more obvious than others. It's very frustrating, to be honest with you. To me, it is very frustrating when you see things that are. I mean, regardless, let's if you're listening right now and you're right or you're left or whatever, the sole fact that you take any two news channels out there and they're saying completely opposite things, right? They directly contradict each other. One of them has to be lying. That's just the fact of it. You know what I mean? And there is no accountability. So someone is lying somewhere, and they're being allowed to continue to lie. And we're all arguing about who the liars are, right? But nothing's happening. And I'm glad there is still two sides. Don't get me wrong. That's the whole free speech thing. But I think it is very dangerous that people are just allowed to spread lies with no consequences. I think it does matter. I really do. I think free speech is important, but I also think that to be able to say it's lies that have so much impact is almost as equally a problem as it is to just censor everyone in the first place and not have free speech. I think they're both pretty big issues, and I seem to think that we're neglecting one, not just in America, but just in general.
Yeah, I think it was Fox News a few years ago was sued basically for knowingly spreading lies, and they lost. And I think they had to pay, some ridiculous amount of money, hundreds of $1 million or
Yeah,
whatever.
it was
Um,
the COVID vaccines. They were proved to have been lying about that. I think they had to pay like almost 800 million.
okay. Yeah, yeah, it's a tough line to walk because on one hand there should be free speech where you can say what you think and what you think is right, and you could twist things a little bit in your direction. But at some point, especially with major news organizations, it's like you said, there has to be some accountability because they have to recognize, hey, we have an audience of 20 million people. We have an obligation to tell them the truth.
Yeah.
And I know that there's no perfect answer for this, but I wish there was. I know that fact checking became a thing like 5 or 10 years ago, and most people kind of hated that. But I
Yeah.
wish there was some like Supreme Court in the United States that was completely unpartisan. And whenever it came to major United States issues or global issues, like they would get the facts, like ChatGPT. ChatGPT is what we need. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm just screw humans, dude. We need
You know,
ChatGPT to
you
just
might be
give
on
us our information on the news.
you might be onto something. Like if we can get a robot that is totally unbiased with no agenda put in it, and it simply takes like what it knows about humanity, is that not the most like truth telling thing we can ever get? That I think there's some good potential there in AI that unfortunately I don't think we're gonna get, but I think you're onto something. And again, there's no way to know whether it's unbiased as well unless there's some sort of laws or something that people have to follow. But I think you're onto something there. That could be a good use of AI.
Well, there's your $1 million idea for the audience, for whoever has enough money to start that up. Just Get your own news station. Get like a dumb little robot, maybe even a puppet if you want, and then just feed ChatGPT into it, and it'll spit out the stories. And it could give a little bit from both sides and just like facts, just straight facts.
Yeah, yeah, straight facts. I know that one thing I've seen, Channel 5, Andrew Callahan, he,
Yeah, yeah, I love Channel 5.
I don't know if he runs it, but he either runs it or sponsors. He's got this thing that he advertises. It's like a website that compiles.
Middle Ground News.
Is that what it is? Yeah. And I've never looked into it because I think it's a subscription thing. But from what I've seen, like that seems to be the closest thing we can get to having any sort of. I mean, it's not unbiased. It just gives you everything, you know, and it kind of reduces the echo chambers. So stuff like that, I think we should have more of. I don't know. I think that kind of stuff is rare because people know where they're going and they're deliberate echo chambers, and everybody knows that. And I think that's the big problem. Another problem that I don't think people think about is everything is given to us immediately nowadays, and so thereby we have to kind of assume things like, you know what I mean, like new big breaking news happens, and then you've got Fox News, CNN. They have these like people around tables who have to like, okay, this is what it means, and this is why it's a good thing, or this is why it's a bad thing, and it's kind of hard to know whether it's a good or bad thing 5 seconds after it happens. You know what I mean? Like,
right,
things come to us so fast that it almost has to be propaganda, because like how we don't even know how this is going to turn out. We're not just getting the facts, we're getting the opinions about it, and like, how are you supposed to know, right? I guess you can have historians who like, this is similar to something had in the past, and that's good. But yeah, I'm not sure how to fix that problem, but that's what I've noticed. There's just so much more opinion added on to the actual news, and it sells. I guess that's why people like, it's like entertainment.
yeah. It goes back to something that you and I were talking about before the podcast. Actually, it's people. People are looking for something when they turn on YouTube or turn on the news.
Yeah,
And if it's what they want to hear as opposed to the truth, then that's what they're going to click on.
maybe it's personality. Maybe we like connecting to other personality. Like we like to see what other people's opinions are. Before you see a movie, you look up reviews. So I guess we just like to see other people's opinions. So we like to be told what to think. Like genuinely.
We do. We're sheep. We've said this
Yeah.
before. We're sheep.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like, let's say in a perfect world we got rid of propaganda and censorship was perfect in whatever way you deem to be so. Maybe we would like just progress right back where we were. Opinion pieces would start coming back, and people would create their own echo chambers, and people would be able to just say whatever they want. And maybe this is a natural regression of humanity. So
It's a necessary evil.
yeah, we're shackling ourselves.
Yeah, we like it. We like being shackled.
That's right. It's a lot easier than having to think.
It is. It
Yeah,
is. Hey, we've had an AI episode before about emotions and human flaws. I think we made some good points about AI in this episode too. AI could do a lot for us when it comes to cutting out all the human BS that we don't need.
that's true. Here, I have a question though. Since we've talked about why censorship could be a good thing, or why it should be, or whatever. Let's just briefly, I think everybody kind of knows, but when would you say censorship is bad? I think we should talk about that.
Um, okay, so we just discussed when we need censorship. So when is it bad? I would say it's bad when. What's the best way to put my thoughts on that? I would say censorship is wrong when you are actively trying to protect yourself by silencing things that you disagree with.
Wow, that's pretty good. That's pretty profound. Yeah. I think
What about you?
in addition, it's like when it's purely trying to stop someone else's opinion because you don't like it, not because it's wrong, or even when it's wrong, to be honest. Because I don't think people should not be allowed to say wrong things. People should be allowed to have ideas. We don't have like a mix of ideas. That's a bad thing. So, yeah, I would also add when you're just trying to purely silence someone else, not because it hurts someone or what have you, but it doesn't align with what you like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like whenever I hear about censorship in the news or on the internet, most times these days, it's usually for that reason. It's just people trying to silence the other side because they disagree with them. And they try to frame it in a way where they say, hey, it's because it's harmful, it's hurting these people. But it's, a lot of the time it's just because it's stuff that you disagree with. So,
Yeah, and I guess we kind of agreed that when censorship is okay is when it's proven to be a lie and proven to be harmful, and that takes time is the problem. You know, so even if someone says that, something they shouldn't be saying and something that should be censored, it's kind of hard to prove that it should be censored. That's a process. So
right.
that's
Yeah.
maybe the use of AI, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes back to AI helping us fix up our flaws. That would be another good example.
Yeah,
But but yeah, there's certainly good times and bad times for censorship, but we've seen a lot more bad examples of censorship than good ones throughout history and
yeah, and AI is not
shame.
there. I'd say everybody's going to be like, "Why would you say that?" Well, not in the current state of AI. I'm just saying potentially.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, that is a little bit over the hour mark. Um, I actually don't really have a final question this time, just because I think my beautiful wifey wants me to hop off. But Buck, if you do you have any other major questions you'd like to end the podcast with?
No, no. If you need to go, man, we'll wrap it up.
Okay, well, sounds good. We'll probably leave it there then. But good conversations, lots of different things to be covered. I Yeah, never mind. I won't get into it. I won't go down the
Yeah,
rabbit hole again.
yeah,
Ladies and
yeah.
gentlemen,
You need to shut up, okay? Because it's a lie.
it probably is a lie. What I was about to say was probably propaganda.
Yeah, shut up.
So don't. Yeah, so I'm gonna stop talking. Go chat GPT it instead.
Yeah, and I know you're keeping
Um,
secrets from us too. We better get those next week.
yeah, I'll make sure to give those out next week, first thing. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Social Eclipse. Make sure you go check out our sponsor, Skittles. Code this week is uh,
Secrets and
trying to
lies.
Secrets and Lies. That's right. All one word. Secrets and Lies. No capitals. Do that for a whole 20% off.
Yeah.
And hope you all had a happy holidays. Make sure you go check out Buck's YouTube channel. Link in the description. And we'll catch you guys in next week's episode.
Bye bye.